Hello, everybody. Good evening. I am Ashish. I'm the founder and CEO of MASH Project Foundation. It gives me a great delight to moderate today's panel discussion on the occasion of World Mental Health Day, an important date on the calendar, which reminds us that how important for all of us to talk about this topic, which is not talked about enough, and all the more important when it comes to young people's mental health. MASH Project Foundation, in partnership with Verse Innovations, which is a organization which runs a family of media platform, including Josh, Daily Hunt, along with our partners, OneIndia, Fortis, and Fortis Mental Health and AVPN, has been running a month-long campaign called There for You. And today's panel discussion is part of that campaign to bring diverse voices, multi-stakeholder voices on this topic of making mental health a universal human right for all of us. Um, Today's discussion is specifically focusing on young people's mental health. Young people is a very important aspect of our society, one of the biggest asset when we talk about India becoming a powerhouse of growth engine. It's very important to address young people's health in general, but mental health all the more important. Today's panel discussion is it has a great and exciting lineup of speakers. Some of them I've known personally over the last few years, and each one of them are doing incredible work. So I thought, why not I use this occasion to bring them all together and hear from them on how can we continue to increase our effort and investments when it comes to increasing, enhancing, and making our society a lot more healthier when it comes to mental health for our young people. So, without spending too much time, I'll quickly introduce our panelists. First, I have Anmol, who is a young person which we have today. And Anmol is from the YP Foundation and is also part of Youth Ke Bol initiative. Then we have Lavanya Jayaram, who's the executive director of AVPN in South Asia. Then we have Noopur Jhunjhunwala, who's founder of ChangeInkk. Then we have Dr. Samir Parikh, director of Fortis Mental Health Program, and Soumya Menon, who is senior director, editorial and content strategy at OneIndia. I haven't talked about their work because each one of them does such extensive work. In fact, I will ask them to talk and tell us a little bit about their work and also their thoughts on this year's World Mental Health Day theme, which is mental health being a universal human right for all of us. So I'd like to start with Dr. Parikh, Dr. Samir Parikh. Why don't we start with you, sir?
Actually, try and ask yourself a question. Try to define health without using mental health in any context. You won't be able to do that. If you are a healthcare provider and if you don't have integrated mental health programs across the board for all your healthcare services that you are providing, then it is not helpful as well as physical health. Similarly, if you have, let's say, you go to a hospital, you get a preventative checkup. It's not a preventative checkup. If you don't have psychological health, call it the physical. So anyone who does not the mental health needs to be seen as the fundamental right, most important component of health. Needs to take it there, define health or define healthcare without using mental health as a concept. And since you can't do that, that should answer the question why mental health needs to be a universal. In absence of mental health, there is neither any physical health, nor there can be well-being at a societal level, nor there can be quality of life, nor can human beings function at a productive level, nor there can be happiness. It all comes down to our understanding the points, prioritizing what we do, and making it universal.
Thank you, Dr. Parikh, and also you. Thanks for sharing those thoughts with us. But tell us a little bit about your work. I know Fortis Mental Health Program is doing such wonderful work across schools, especially with students. And fortunately, we've been partners with so many of those initiatives with you. It'll be great to share something with our audience about the great work that you've been doing at Fortis Mental Health.
So most people do what limited work they can do at their own limit. These are all droplets in an ocean of mental. We do have a school mental health program which is focused upon working on skills both for children, parents, and teachers from a mental health curriculum. A lot of things we have on media. We work on things, decline, which is 14 languages. But our main focus is to prioritize well-being for school children. Something we've been doing now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Parikh, and again, big congratulations for all this work over the years. I'll now come to quickly to Soumya and hear from her. Soumya, tell us. You've been a journalist and you've been seeing so much work that's happening, and I know One India and the family of media platforms have been talking about so many issues. What are your thoughts on this year's rights, and also tell us a little bit about your work on this topic?
So, our work at One India has greatly been as responsible media organization where we are trying to understand what is it that people like to read. So, part of what we do at our end is to see social trends which comes out of what people are searching on the internet. What are the kind of news people would like to read? Are people scared of word like news? And when we were doing this kind of research and trying to dig deeper, the revelations were quite interesting. One was kind of searches we were seeing which were coming from youngsters were like quite astounding. I can talk from my personal example that when we would be studying and we would be trying to find jobs, we would simply search what is the highest paying job. At a certain month of the year, these were the most searched keywords. Right, your school, all of our schools and colleges would be getting over, and we would be saying job vacancies. We were the keywords we would be all looking for. The situation has trended. That very same period when schools and colleges end, keywords which are maximum used now are what are the symptoms of depression, what is anxiety, what is social anxiety. A very recent trend we are seeing now is festival anxiety. These are things which happen and when I was speaking to a group of people and asked them, this seems very click to say all these new terminologies and stuff being formed, but what does it actually mean? My personal finding was that there is deep rooted fear in some way, but they are not able to articulate it. There is a deep gap between feeling, articulating, and then coining into some sort of language. And that is where, as media watchers, media organizations, our role comes in. We kind of sadly fall into very deep, we fall into dark holes where mental health, any kind of mental bracketing only comes when it comes to crime stories. Secondly, it happens when there is a very glamorous breakdown of relationships. So we at One India have been trying to very cohesively, holistically trying to break out of it. It's very deep shackles. I would love to be very surprised and say that yes, we have broken out of it. We haven't. But that's already happening with the kind of teams and members who are now joining and the kind of teams we are trying to build for the next future. These are completely, there's a conscious effort to make sure content is free from the baggage of certain words. Gender identity, fluidity, these are all, sometimes I feel we get all lost in these kind of vocabulary, but the true meaning and definition of these words sadly is very far. Globally, in India specifically, the disparity is very high. So we are trying to do that across our platforms, honestly. We are trying to do that in Daily Hunt. We are trying to do that on Josh. And One India is trying to lead that march. The people here in this group are some of the great stakeholders, and they're the torch bearers of these kind of issues, and we are trying to learn from them, and we are trying to partner with them to make sure that happens very well.
Perfect. Thank you, Soumya. I think it's very important aspect of role of media that you touched upon, especially when it's so diverse, and and I think later in this conversation we will definitely bring more light in terms of bridging this gap as well. Thank you, Soumya. I want to bring a young person before I go to Lavanya and Noopur and hear from Anmol. Anmol, tell us about yourself, what you do. I know a little bit, but definitely our audience would like to know more, and also your thought when you think about this theme and this day of World Mental Health Day, and it being a universal right for all of us.
Yeah, thanks, Ashish. So, the way Dr. Samir started, it was wonderful. Think about health, and you won't be able to define it without really thinking about mental health. And what Soumya also said, that a lot of times we are so busy in trying to put ourselves into these boxes and compartments of whether we have depression or anxiety or what kind of a disorder do we have. We're trying to pathologize all emotions and all feelings so much that now no emotion or no feeling is left regular or normal or typical as a human experience. So we are moving very far from that, and we need to come back and see that these are all emotions that humans experience on a daily basis, and that we don't need to pathologize everything all at the same time. And we need to say that there are subjectivities, that every human can have a different experience, and we need to create space for those experiences instead of putting them into boxes. So that is, yes, thank you, Soumya, and thank you, Dr. Samir, for bringing that so beautifully. So hi, I'm Anmol, and I am a trans non-binary person. My pronouns are they and them, and I am from the YP Foundation. We are an organization of young people, and we work on young people issues. So what I primarily work on is sexual and reproductive health and rights from a justice-based lens with young people and adolescents across many states in India using various media. One of them being comprehensive sexuality education, which we feel is very, very important and is very intricately connected with mental health. So I think there is like an intersection that exists in all of these areas. So yeah, more on what we think about mental health when you ask questions. But yeah, that'll be my introduction. Thank you.
Ashish, before you take on it, depression is a clinical disorder. Just because depression also has an English name, that neither means that one is one disorder. It's just that the word is procedures. All sadness does not mean depression. And today, because people use terms like OC, MOC, and talk in terms of even when it comes to using words like solution, essentially a clinical term, and so on and so forth. It is because these terms are used. That's why stigma comes over. Are we pathologizing? Please be very clear. Where we stand in the world, depression is amongst the single largest in the world. 280 odd million people in the world suffer from depression. There are 230 million plus from anxiety disorders. In the 2 years of the pandemic, the WHO clearly mentions a 25% increase of depression in anxiety. And because some of these terms are used closely, that does not mean that diagnosis is putting people in compartment. On the contrary, the struggle of mental health in ensuring that people struggling with mental illnesses, their rights and their treatments are ensured. We are struggling globally because 70% of people who need help don't seek help primarily because either there is stigma or there is lack of or affordability of comprehensive clinical medicine services. It's very important to demarcate this as well. And there is nothing subjective when it comes to clinical diagnosis. Subjective are people's experience. We all have feelings, we all have our needs. We have the liberty and should have the freedom to feel with a sense of responsibility without crossing lines. That's one. At the same time, also need to understand the diagnosis happens clinical approach. So if person A is having depression, that means there is possibly a chemical imbalance and a chemical imbalance correction may be required. Or this individual may require therapeutic intervention which is structured, standardized, evidence-based treatment which needs to be given or other parameters. Why I'm saying this, whilst we talk of preventive, community-based, positive mental health, all of this, we also need to understand there are mental illness are responsible for about 1 in 5%. For every 6 days lost through disability, one comes from it. So we need to give that perspective as well.
Got it. Thank you, Dr. Parikh, for throwing light. I think these are some of the things we use very casually without having much awareness, and very important to bring that to light. I'll quickly thank you also, Anmol, sharing. I'll quickly come to now Noopur and hear her thoughts and the amazing work she's doing at ChangeInkk.
Thank you so much, Ashish. It's such an honor to be here. Dr. Parikh, I could not agree more with you. You know, it's rung a bell so deep with me because I come from a family where depression runs deep, mental health challenges and illness run very deep. The stigma is so strong that they will take close to 30 tablets a day which deal with heart, kidney, diabetes, sugar, all of that. That one pill that needs to be taken for the depression, for the chemical balances, is such a challenge to take as a sign of personal failure. And I think that's the issue. And in the beginning, you started saying that mental health and physical health are separate, but actually mental health has a physical component to it, where there are actual chemical imbalances in the brain which cause it, and often that gets lost in the conversations that we have, where it becomes an individual's ability to cope, and the stigma around it is so strong. And especially with younger people, we at ChangeInkk work very closely with the neurodiverse community, and for them this is actually both a trigger and a symptom. And I say that because for people with learning disabilities, social emotional well-being is one of the ways that it manifests. The struggles to not be able to write as well as they speak, maybe the judgments around their IQs being very smart, but because of the judgments that because you can't read, write, spell, those kind of issues lead to a lot of mental health illnesses with higher levels of anxiety, depression, suicide, delinquency in the forms of addictions come into play as well. People who may have ADHD struggle with managing time because of their neurodiverse condition, which leads to high levels of anxiety. So they are both, and then we have people who are on the autism spectrum who can't regulate, and suddenly over a period of time come down to having a breakdown, a mental breakdown, because we haven't managed the stimulus that's been given to them. So for the community that I work with, especially with young people who are dealing with so many other challenges, adjusting, like Soumya said, to, community, growing up, puberty, managing relationships, the bombardment from the media, um, the neurodiverse community struggles with just managing their condition, mental illness or not. So both a trigger and a manifestation of it is what something that we work very closely with to figure out how to support these individuals around that.
Thank you, Noopur. And I know it's a very cross-disciplinary issue when it looks at mental health, especially the kind of children, neurodiverse children that you work with. So I'll come back to you. I have a few more questions, but I'll quickly go to Lavanya and hear her thoughts on the topic and the AVPN, actually, in terms of driving more investment when it comes to youth mental well-being. So Lavanya, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ashish, and also for bringing us together on this panel. There's just so much of learning. I think first step is to be aware the vocabulary that's important to be even discussing a topic as grave as this. Sometimes you want to think back how your childhood was, where this issue was not an issue at all. People were not discussing it. Today, at least, the good part is that there is a language around it, and I think it goes a lot to the kind of effort that all your organizations are doing, whether it's media, whether it's on implementation, whether it's on healthcare. So it's fantastic to see all of this come together. I step in from the social investment lens. I represent AVPN, that's an organization that's really an ecosystem builder who's trying to, with a mission of trying to move more capital towards impact work, areas of impact which are less funded, ignored, less understood, and I think mental health fits very, very strongly in that space. That there isn't enough of an investment for research in that space, to create awareness in that space, to create accessibility to the transformative kind of impact solutions that there are for people who need these services, right? So as our effort, maiden effort in the mental health space, our demographic that we are focusing on is in the youth space, so that we can start earlier where the problems might be more acute. And also the learning quotient is high, right? To be more aware as you're growing up. So youth is a segment that we are looking at as impact leaders as well of tomorrow. So if they learn early, if they're given enough of support, that's really where I think our effort in launching a youth mental well-being fund was our maiden effort in this space. And this fund is to support transformative impact organizations to be able to give more access to the youth, to be able to avail these services, help themselves earlier, and also create an ecosystem of awareness in a wider way in that sense. So that's really our effort, and we represent Asia. I believe with the kind of volumes of population we have, we're the second highest, of course, in statistics. I think Dr. Parikh was shouting on us, was very, very acutely, sharply focused in Asia as well, where we're seeing these numbers dramatically being impacted in the mental health space. But I also wanted to step back and say, at an individual level, we've all heard of the Maslow's theory, how it starts. We all acknowledge that physiology is like the numero uno area of focus for us to generally exist, physiology, right? And then there's, of course, our safety, then there's love, there's self-esteem, all of which are the base parameters of our well-being. And mental well-being is where there's such a tremendous focus. Yet we completely put that aside and are looking for things, the tiers above it, right? Where it's health or physical health or wealth, and there are other areas that we are chasing after and not taking care of ourselves. And that access and that really that to be able to provide that for individuals to address the core of our being, I think is an important piece. And I'm glad to see the effort just on this call, but I'm hoping that we can make a wider impact, and what better than the World Mental Health Day to mark. So
Thanks, Ashish.
Thank you, Lavanya. Thanks a lot for highlighting the role of different stakeholders when you talk about addressing an issue, and commendable work that everything is doing. Not only just moving capital, but it's also other kind of resources by just allowing so many partnerships to happen. I'll quickly come to first topic of our discussion in terms of, when we talk about young people's health. I think the primary stakeholders, be it parents, be it teachers, be it caregivers, right? So sometimes they themselves don't know. I have seen this up and close that when it comes to discussion of mental health, they themselves are not aware. So I'd like to quickly go to Dr. Parikh and Noopur, given that you work very closely with very very young people, and you might have seen a lot of your own experiences, and our audience would definitely will have a lot of such people. So A, how do they, firstly identify and deal with this issue? B, what can they do to equip themselves and, be more empowered to help young people? So Dr. Parikh, I'll start first with you.
Actually, you should look at those you have to be your being a state of point when your ability to understand your strengths, your ability to use your strengths, your ability to go day in and day out of regular lives. Yeah. Think of well-being, you are not able to also that also illness, like any relationship, it was even your functionality for a bare minimum period of 2 weeks from any of these factors causing significant damage to your overall functionality. Bringing awareness about maintaining sense of understanding then actually they are not going to. So it's true that with power, so it also ensures the first advantage the output cost. So you are able to move for corrective approach to that. Because when you have an interaction, when you are struggling with something, not given non-regimental approach will fall. The view is not feel like stop putting us to sharp creating more problems both in person to social and overall. So that's the thing.
Got it. Noopur, coming back to you with the same question.
Thank you. I think I'd like to build on Dr. Parikh's. I totally agree that we must have an integrated mental health program in the curriculum. I also think that we need to be mindful of how children actually exhibit conditions of mental health. Not everything is verbalized. Some of it is subtle body language, be a shift in friends, it could be sudden introvertness, it could be sudden extrovertness. Masking is a big issue that youngsters feel pressure to fit in. They mask friendships, they mask how they feel, they mask how their relationships are. And it's important that we create those safe spaces, people to have those conversations where those masks come off. That's when you really realize how severe long-term, short-term these mental health, is it a health issue, is it an illness, what's happening. Also, I think the stigma around caregivers, whether it's parent, it may be a friend, it may be a teacher, the onus on them, right? This person cannot have it. I have given a happy environment for them to live. But they are not abused. We don't have a financial problem. उनको लाइफ में क्या प्रॉब्लम है दुखी होने के लिए? आजकल के बच्चों का टंटा है, मतलब किसी ने लाइक नहीं किया होगा पिक्चर, राइट? लाइक we need to destigmatize it for ourselves as caregivers, because it's not our failure, right? I'm a parent of 3 children, and 2 of them are teenagers who have their own mental health challenges every day. I have a daughter who's come out of depression, who went through years of treatment and medication, and daily seeing her struggle through that was difficult. But we had to have a walk that journey and not hold ourselves responsible for it. We had to hold ourselves responsible to not trigger it, which are 2 very different things, right? And that nuance of understanding and acceptance, when that happens, right, then you will become an enabler to get the support and access to services that Dr. Parikh was saying. Often parents will not put a child on medication. I'm one of them. Lifelong ho jayega. What is this? Like I've grown up with parents who've been on antidepressant medicines. I have a teenage daughter who wants to go on it, and I'm just like, no, still be lifelong. In the space, I have that fear, right? But can I give access to other services and coping tools? And those are things that I think we need to be mindful of. That's one. Second is also mindful of reasons and what I call as triggers of why the child is actually feeling what they are. And when I say child, I'm saying youth, loosely, because I am not a young person on the panel, but, as a young adult, it could be a teenager, it could be a college-going person, whoever. We need to start recognizing and enabling people to see triggers within themselves that they get triggered by. It could be an examination, stress around that. It could be for public speaking. It could be a party that they have to go to. It could be saying no to somebody for something. And individual people have different things. And again, understanding, and I can't stress this enough, is your mental illness challenge a manifestation of a larger invisible problem, which could be your neurodiversity? ADHD manifests not necessarily as kids who are hyperactive, jumping from one thing to the other. ADHD manifests as high levels of anxiety that can lead to suicidal thoughts when, especially if you're a high achiever, then I am not able to cope. मेरा काम ही नहीं खत्म हो रहा है. This paper is just not perfect. This project is just not good. I did not get that 90%. I got an 89%. कैसे हुआ? Right? And that is an ADHD. It could be an ADHD challenge. It could be a learning disability challenge that a child is studied, goes and does the exam and forgets. And no fault of the child. It's not because they didn't put in the effort. Because their brain, the way it's wired, their neurological wire, does not allow the retention. Right? So the strategies used were wrong, triggering that anxiety. And that anxiety can then lead to physical illness as well. High levels of fever. I have a colleague who, when she joined us, she's on the spectrum, autism spectrum. We did not realize, right? She's a really smart kid, did 8 to 9 hours of back-to-back meeting and brainstorming. Was up, active, tuck, and I was very impressed that this is a young professional really succeeding. Guess what happened as soon as she went home? She had a mental breakdown where she was sobbing non-stop for 6 hours. Incapacitated to move to the next day. Had to take leave, but did not know how to tell me. As a boss, I was furious with myself that I didn't pick it up. Because, this is a ASD, but very well masked individual who was high performing for me as an organization. I was very happy. I was pushing up our limits. That's what bosses do. But it had consequences. Similarly, in school, teachers pushing it a little bit more. Ho jayega, cope kar lenge. Those are things that as teachers, parents, colleagues, bosses, because a lot of us work with young people also, need to be mindful of and start learning more about.
I think thanks, Noopur. Awareness at all levels are very, very critical because, like you said, when you're dealing with such situations around you, especially in your home or in a workspace, sometimes you also don't know how to support, right? and that doing sometimes support may end up also doing more harm. So I think awareness at all at all levels are very critical. And with that, I'll quickly want to come to now Soumya, because when we're talking about awareness, I think media plays a very, very important role. So Soumya, being a journalist and also now being, leading a very large, news platform, uh, why do you think, like, mental health is not talked, as much as it should be, among so many issues out there? And what do you think can be done more to bring awareness, like Nupur highlighted, right? Especially at a fundamental primary caregiving level.
Uh, I think it is getting talked now. I think the true awakening happened in COVID, I would say. Uh, at least there was a recognition for some themes which are essential parts of our life, people to fall back on, a comfort zone, going back to the roots. So, this kind of a very true ABC blocks of mental well being, kind of the true awakening kind of happened there. But in uh, the journey to a holistic mental health and illness definition, differentiation, I am the true eternal journalistic cynic. We are far from that. I think the first step would be that yes, as you said, the conversation has started happening. Sadly, it's highly limited to tier A towns. We are talking Delhi, Mumbai, maybe some in Kolkata, trickling into Chennai. But anywhere you go beyond these borders, it's a void. It's a total void. I can tell you, over my years of experience talking to journalists, newsmakers, news creators, like, if you even ask a question like, was this person seeking help? Was there somebody a go-to for this? And it's shockingly black and white answers you'll get. Pagal nahi hai. Yeah, it would be like, doctor ke paas jana hai. Dawai leni hai. And we've gone there and we've been there, covering events, incidents, some really, things which scar you for life. So one, the recognition beyond these cities is not happening. We have to go down to basics there still. Second, people who are these connecting dots between gathering for us and making it to front page headlines, the education also has to happen there to ask the right question. The definition of mental health in the Indian definition does not exist. There is huge disparities in India. We have regional conflicts, we have displacement, we have conflict zones, we have indigenous groups who have been denied rights for all their life. The questions have started, the flickers and sparks are happening when we talk about displaced people who have been, generations involved in conflict. Sparks are happening, the kind of baggage they carry. Have we been able to connect the dots? No, that would require education, as you said, at the right level, as everybody has been saying, but also educating the connecting dots to when they go there, they ask the right question. That is a very, very rocky path, and to get there, because you have to educate, you have to comfort, and you have to set perspective for them. Every journalist cannot have the perspective of every group out there in India. Can you imagine the manifold educational level that will be required there? It's a tough road, and understanding the differences between these disparities. It's not only regional, it's economic, it's educational, it's what I'm telling you, as simple as the things which happen. I'm a Menon, I come from Kerala. The kind of issues we see there, which nobody is failing to recognize, is of the growing amount of senior citizens in the state, because everybody is leaving the state to go abroad. Kind of recognition of these fine-tuned disparities is people are now kind of raising to it, but I have to admit, we are far from that. That kind of work requires a concerted effort from stepping out of our comfort zones of Delhi's and Bombay's, and kind of going down and talking to them and saying that, guys, these issues don't come up when just we're talking about divorce case hai, yeah, separation case hai, yeah, this there was a crime and there was a grotesque murder case. I swear, mental health came to the front pages only for that. I don't want to go into the actual case, but you all can guess it. When the criminality and the grotesque nature of the thing came out was when it was in the front page. What did the criminal go through? Why? What the making of a criminal? You know, you have a Silence of the Lambs kind of an image of what is happening behind things. So education, definition within the Indian subcontext, and totally de-glamorizing and going down to APC. And we are doing it, but long way to go.
Ashish, may I add to that?
Sure.
Soumya, I agree with you. I think also that adds to the stigma, right? That it's only the crazy ones who go to the extreme level that have the mental illness. But I think there are new opportunities that are evolving in the new digital platforms, right? That the younger people are consuming. You have a lot of influencers now who are openly talking about mental health challenges. Instagram, TikTok, there are tremendous amount of reels, and I think though that's like a double-edged sword. So you have a lot of kids who are now self-diagnosing and maybe wrongly diagnosing and manifesting things incorrectly. But at the same time, it's normalizing the conversation to a large extent, at least with the urban youth. And partially, I think with some second and third tier cities, I think things may start moving in as these conversations percolate through social media, which is the non-traditional media content. And I think there's an opportunity to sort of leverage some of that conversations to reach out to the youth as well.
Very well said, Noopur. Completely agreeing with you, which is why we are having this conversation to be taken on our platform, and we want people to listen to this. But we have a way to go till it makes it to the front page of a major newspaper, where it's considered. Very simply said, it is still a long way to go from being the glaring headline on a front page to being a follow-up story on the second page. That's what I said. And the social media platforms are doing a wow job. Josh, we have constant shout-outs, call-outs, and the kind of reinforced support we get is like astounding. Do all journalists want to cover this? That's where things get a bit foggy, So yes.
Sorry, I was on mute. I would say thank you, Soumya and Noopur, for bringing that very important aspect when we talk about media and the role that media plays. I'll come to Anmol and understand from Anmol, from you, how do you see when we talk about mental health, right? And especially now you've been working with the YP Foundation as well as UK Bold Initiative, right? Tell us something in terms of when we talk about mental health, there are so many, among young people also, there are such diverse groups, right? There are always underrepresented groups like, LGBTQI groups or low-income communities or young people with special needs. What kind of interventions are required? And with your work, tell us some of your experiences that you see working with such communities.
Thanks, Ashish. So, like everyone has been saying that the work of awareness is very, very important right now. There's severe lack of awareness, and even if there is some awareness, but it's maybe like a lot of misinformation is also being given, which is worse than lack of information, I would say. So that's one thing. You're absolutely right that like in the young constituency, in the like youth, which is the biggest constituency of India right now, there's obviously like a lot of diversity. And what Soumya was also saying, I was really like, there was a lot of resonance there, that there's so much that like a lot of context is required when we are speaking to young people and when we are speaking about mental health in general. What I meant earlier also about compartmentalizing and about pathologizing was that a lot of context is missing. When we talk about these things, we don't really take into account the context of a person, for example, coming from a marginalized community or from a community, from a family which is well-to-do now, but has a history of intergenerational trauma, which does impact your mental health. Because, like Dr. Samir and Noopur also said that, like, you cannot distinct, like, you can't really absolutely differentiate physical health and mental health, because there's a psychosomatic component, and like also runs down in your genes. So it's just like a lot that we need to take account of. And when we speak about the queer community, again, that's a very different kind of experience that people are going through right now, with the kind of stigma that is there, and with the kind of comments that are made. Of course, there is a small community which is real. Queer community is not as small as we think it is, to be honest. So it's not underrepresented, but it's a close-knit community. Of course, there are there's diversity there as well, because there's religious diversity, caste diversity, class diversity that impacts within the queer community also, who has the power. And power is a great function of impacting someone's mental health as well. जिसके पास ज़्यादा सत्ता का mental health थोड़ा better, या access to mental health services is better. So all of these things we need to really think about when, especially working with a young constituency. Context really matters, and one thing which is very, very important is that in any intervention that we go to, be it what Noopur and Dr. Samir were suggesting, that definitely there has to be a component about mental health in the curriculum. It is very, very important that that happens. Similarly, for comprehensive sexuality education, because when we don't know about our bodies and about our sexual and reproductive health and rights, it's so our bodily autonomy is taken away from us at such a young age, and we have those rights. We don't know about those rights, or we know about those rights through various interventions, but do we have access to those rights is again a question. Like Noopur said that if you engage with young people and tell them about what is mental health and all of that, great. But then you need a safer space for young people to actually be able to access their rights, right? And that safer space can only be created when we are engaging with the primary stakeholders, which is parents, community leaders, government leaders, teachers, all of these people. So bringing all of them together is very, very important. And yes, comprehensive sexuality education also should definitely be a part of curriculum, and in NEP it's very loosely there, but it is there is a mention of sexuality education, so that's a win. I mean, we can definitely read it our own way, because that's a pro, that it's really loosely put in there, so we can read it however we want, and we'll read it to our benefit. But yeah, so that's how it's impacting people. And one thing we don't understand is, I'll take just a minute and also speak a little about SRH, which is really important for young people, is that if you are going through changes in your body, which are every human goes through puberty, right? And those changes can be so scary for a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old when nobody is talking to them about those changes, and everybody is just asking them to, क्योंकि आप बड़े हो गए हो तो behave like an adult, but also you're a child, so you don't get a say in, like, you don't have any decision making power, but you have to, act like an adult. So that
Right.
itself is very confusing. And we need to speak to them about those things. When we're speaking about access to abortion, safe abortion, contraception, because let's be honest, I know that like POXO के हिसाब से sexual activity or any like engaging in any sexual activity under 18 is crime. But when we speak about agency and when we speak about consent, and we know that in India or anywhere in the world, this is not really the reality, that a 12-year-old and 14-year-old is also engaging in, sexual activity to a variety, to a range of experiences. So there, for them to have access to that kind of information where they can make informed decisions for themselves and not live with the anxiety that that is shown to them as consequences of if you try to access pleasure for yourself. A consequence for you will be that you will be put behind bars or that you will get pregnant. But like, let's talk about safer sex practices then. Let's talk about communication and consent and contraception.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Anmol. I think you touched upon a very important aspect, that how mental health also has a very, very, overlapping impact on other areas as well, and that comes back affecting young person's mental health. So we need to invest on awareness. Again, the same point coming again in at all levels, but also access, making it some of these services more accessible, especially to young people who may not have like tools and services that maybe more privileged ones might have, right? So thank you so much. I'll quickly come to Lavanya, and we're talking about investing in young people, and I know AVPN started this very interesting model of a collective pool fund, which is called a Youth Mental Wellbeing Fund, which is very unique and first of its kind initiative. So Lavanya, why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and also how funding instruments or models that are emerging, where are different kinds of investments that are being made, and what is AVPN doing in this regard. Also, since we are closer towards wrapping up, so I'll also request all our panelists to also think of what's your one closing message for our audience will be, and maybe Lavanya, you could also include that as part of your points. So Lavanya, over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ashish. And one of my closing remarks will be a big thank you to the co-panelists. I feel more educated. I am the mother of a 12-year-old. So you can see that I'm in the thick of dealing with those issues at the home level as well, right? When she comes back today with her mark, I don't, emulate my the parents' reactions on why not more? Like, you don't study enough. You're wasting time. Mine is, so are you happy with the outcome, right? So the whole approach is, it has shifted. Sometimes, of course, we all go through introspection, questioning ourselves. What was the right way? Was it our parents' way? Was it our way? Are we, making it more complicated for them? So we don't have all the answers, right? But I believe there's a lot that needs to be invested in this area so that we are all more informed. And that's where I guess the investment angle comes in. We know that mental health has been taken as a minuscule subset of healthcare. We've seen in our own healthcare budget, if I'm not mistaken, it's 1% of the overall healthcare budget, which is, for a population of our size, world number one. Of course, mental health is not world number one. We're around 900 crores. So it obviously accentuates again the responsibility of other capital coming in to play their role to support areas of mental health. Whether today we are seeing a few funders, of course, we have Tata Trust, we have Aditya Birla, we have Biocon, we have Fortis who's doing great work. But of course, we can only count the number of funders that there are in the space on our fingertips, right? We do not have enough funding coming into this space. That's where AVPN is trying to play a role in creating a greater awareness, directing more capital towards youth mental well-being. And the first effort, of course, is a $3 million USD fund, which we've just launched. Currently, we're in the process of inviting applications for organizations that are doing meaningful work in this space I mentioned earlier. The funding also, if you see today, is skewed towards, and we all understand the importance, all of us have talked about it, of awareness, access, maybe, right, to healthcare. There are a number of other things that need intervention as well, which includes creating community support groups or training for mental health workers. We talked about an integrated school approach. So our teachers, are they equipped to see the signals? So it's so multi-layered, so complex that any amount of funding that comes in is going to be less. We all are aware of the challenges that are ahead of us, and we are hoping to build a larger momentum for social investment so that we are able to collectively address this. We see a lot more takers who come in to educate children, for example, but education, will be meaningful once the mental health of the student is addressed, because that's a layer above. So to be able to make that more intrinsic, more hygiene factor in society at large, I think is where our effort is. So my closing remark would also be that it is our effort to encourage more investments to flow into this area, and that effort will continue. It's also an area of a personal passion to be able to support this, and we hope that through our member network, through the wider ecosystem, we're able to generate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lavanya. I'll quickly now come to Soumya. Soumya, your closing thoughts. Yeah.
That was done. Thanks, Ashish. In the midst of all the gore of this new cycles, it's good to be spending some time with all of you. Thank you all for being here. It's really lifts all of us and the work we are doing and trying to be part of. So thank you all for being here. You have to. Mental health is an undeniable right. We have to, but we are a long way from it. So I think when I was speaking to my team before coming here on the panel, and one of my writers on the team said to me, for that we will have to be the change first. And I think that kind of totally captures what the mood and the need of the hour is. We will have to be the change. We at OneIndia want to be there. We are doing it, and we need all your help and support, and everyone watching this program to also be partner with us. So thanks, Ashish, for putting this together for us.
Thank you, Soumya. I'll come to quickly to Noopur. Noopur, your closing thought.
Thank you so much, Ashish, for having me here. It has been really very, very enlightening to hear from everyone. I think my closing comments, in addition to all the conversation about awareness, is two things. I think one is, let's create the safe spaces to have these conversations for people to be able to come out, talk, discuss, and be. These are not safe spaces where you come for treatment or cure, but just places where you can say, I am not feeling too low, can I just sit next to you? Or I'm having anxiety and can you help me calm down? Or, whatever that might be for the young person. That's one. The other was, let's start working together to resilience and accepting each other in spite of the many diversities and complexities that we deal with. Resilience in being able to synthesize the complexities that they live in, which is very different from the world that we were growing up. They're bombarded with opportunity, they're bombarded with options, information is weak. Adult. And that's those struggles. So let's build that resilience. I think it is our responsibility, both moral and ethical, to educate ourselves in how we can do better in supporting the mental health of the youth of our country.
Thank you, Noopur. I'll come to Dr. Parikh now, and then I'll go to Anmol before we close.
No, I think we'd also need partition different blocks. And the fact that an advocate needs to speak about, but not be the end. Personal experiences is not science. That also needs very well understood in a grand way. Because, like I said earlier, because the language that is used in the mental health also happens to similar the language that is used in a day-to-day. So a lot of times we don't when we are talking about mental health, we must understand the right to treatment of mental illness is an absolute non-negotiable must. And no amount of everything else that we do is going to take away from the fundamental right to getting clinically evidence-based ethical affordable treatment for mental illness as well. And that also needs to be understood. If we are to believe that COVID has been a door opener for mental health, only because many of us were hibernating well before that also. Mental health has not suddenly come the last 2 years or there for a very, very long period of time. Continues to be so. Post-COVID, it's not that health seeking behavior has dropped. It's not that suddenly everybody is getting the help and so on and so forth. We are still not feeling the mark when it comes to insurance for people struggling. We are certainly not where we should be in terms of primary health care, having taken mental health in the true sense. We are far away from having crisis intervention support available to people who at a given moment in time need an acute help. We are in a state of acute concern to need help. Even today, healthcare providers across the country do not have robust mental programs. Workplaces do not have adequate mental health support given by organizations, both in terms of supporting it in terms of and afford. Even today, in our schools, we've not been able to integrate the way mental health needs to. When I say we, I do not mean we as a country, I mean we as a nation, right? Do not allow yourself to believe this is a unique problem to our part of the world. We are in high countries, the experts population ratio is as 7 to 1. And in lower income countries, it will be as low as OneIndia. So we do have a deficit, which does not take away the fact that we need to find solutions which fit in our part of the world in a way that we are able to make the advances of mental health with science. To now, that has to be our approach. So I guess more funding required. How do you choose mental goals? How do you measure it? And what is going to be the clinical impact as well? Because where we are struggling the maximum continues to be the lack of integrated clinical interventions required. Both needs to be given value. We create where people can express themselves without the fear of being discriminated. And we are far away from that. At the same time, we also make it right now for the millions who are struggling. Because the impact of awareness is on free. But what about that individual at this moment in time who's having a panic, who's having a major depression, who's having who's having anger? This also needs to be addressed and addressed right now. So one needs to look at the issue of mental health. Wouldn't that make it into a universal right? The right is my well-being, but the right is also, like any other human being, I have struggle. And it's my right to get the right kind of treatment so that I can be back at my highest level of functionality. That's my
Thank you, Dr. Parikh, for giving us that broad overview of what is the different spectrum and the role that each one of us also plays when it comes to making mental health awareness more accessible as well, right? And especially making some of these things more clear. So thank you so much, and I'll at last but not the least, I'll come to Anmol, our young person on the panel, and last one from a young person before we close today's discussion.
Hi. Thank you for having me here. It was wonderful to be a part of this discussion. Got a lot of insights, taking a lot back from this space. Um, One thing that I would like to definitely say as my last comment would be that something that I've already said is that let's not forget that context is very, very subjective, and that context is very, very important. We cannot take any situation out of context. That is one. And second is that we need to be trauma informed in our approach. We need to also understand what trauma, the word trauma means, because there's a lot of nuance. It is also a spectrum. There's just so much that is there as well. So, as young people, I'm sure that the audience will be young people. So, as young people, we need to really use our resources wisely and use our critical thinking and analytical thinking and research what we mean. Also, it's not always just about what is written in the book. Yes, what's written in the book is very important. Yes, evidence-based is very important. Yes, all of that is very important. But as a young person today, I would like to say that lived experiences are extremely important. And if you are feeling a certain way, allow yourself to feel that way and research for yourself. Try to understand what your experience is. How can you find your pleasure? How can you find your glimmer? What are your triggers? How can you cope best in like in the foundation of also not harming others while doing so. So look out for yourself and take care of yourself, but also don't harm others while taking care of yourself. So yeah, that's my last comment for this.
Thank you, Anmol. I think one of the great things about being a moderator is that you can calmly listen and take back all these great nuggets of knowledge and information. So I think I truly enjoyed moderating. I've done many moderations before, but this one moderation I calmly listened through and took back so many things and truly feel very enlightened, and at the same time also realize that there is so much more to learn, right? And also to share this with many more, which I think is very critical as a role all of us will play. And I think that work starts at our homes, it starts at our workspaces, it starts among our friends and family to truly make mental health universal human right for everybody. On behalf of MASH, Versa Changemakers, and our partners, One India, Fortis Mental Health, and AVPN, who put together this great campaign called There For You, So really, really huge thanks to all our panelists for taking out time. And I hope this message, this discussion will go out to many more people and will be truly empowering them in terms of so many important aspects that you raised. We're also working to build a mental health campaigns collective, which will bring again diverse organizations working to make these conversations, awareness, and more narrative about mental health become more and more bigger and accessible. So let's keep all of us keep working together to create a much stronger ecosystem and making mental health truly a universal human right for all of us. Thanks once again, and hope all of you have a good day. Thank you.